The recruitment office buzzed with nervous energy as dozens of young men filled out paperwork, their voices creating a constant hum of anticipation. Sarah Chun sat quietly in the corner, her small frame almost invisible among the broader shoulders and taller figures surrounding her. At 22, she had the kind of face that people often described as sweet or gentle, with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything while revealing nothing of her own thoughts. The recruiting sergeant, a weathered man with graying temples named Williams, moved through the room with practiced efficiency. He had been doing this job for 15 years, and he could spot the different types immediately. There were the eager farm boys looking for adventure, the city kids running from something, the college graduates seeking direction, and the occasional troublemaker who thought military service would be easy money. When he reached Sarah's table, he glanced at her paperwork with barely concealed surprise. Under preferred assignment, she had written in neat handwriting, Infantry Special Operations. Miss Chun, Williams said, his tone gentle but firm, I think there might be some confusion here. We have excellent opportunities in communications, medical support, logistics. I want infantry, Sarah interrupted quietly. Combat assignement. The men at nearby tables had gone silent, their attention drawn by the unusual conversation. Williams felt their eyes on him and cleared his throat uncomfortably. Ma'am, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but combat roles require certain physical standards. I meet every standard listed in your requirements, Sarah said, pulling out a folder. I have documentation of my fitness scores, marksmanship certification from 3 different ranges, and completion certificates from 2 civilian tactical training programs. Williams flipped through the papers, his expression growing more bewildered with each page. The fitness scores weren't just passing, they were exceptional. The marksmanship certifications showed expert-level performance with multiple weapon systems. The tactical training programs were expensive, intensive courses that most serious gun enthusiasts could barely afford, let alone complete successfully. Where did a young lady like you learn to shoot like this? Williams asked, genuinely curious now. My grandfather, Sarah replied simply. He was a sniper in Vietnam. Started teaching me when I was 8. Well, that's impressive, Williams admitted, though his tone suggested he remained unconvinced. But there's a big difference between civilian training and actual combat conditions. The infantry isn't like the movies, miss. It's brutal, exhausting work that breaks down men twice your size. Sarah met his gaze steadily. I understand the requirements, Sergeant Williams. I've researched this thoroughly. Have you considered that your fellow soldiers might not be comfortable with a woman in their unit? Combat requires absolute trust and cohesion. Then, they'll have to learn to trust me based on my performance, just like everyone else earns trust, Sarah said matter-of-factly. Williams looked at her for a long moment, then at the impressive documentation spread before him. Finally, he sighed and stamped her paperwork. Against my better judgment, I'm going to let you try, he said. But when you wash out in basic training, don't say nobody warned you. Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the office. Thank you, Sergeant. You won't regret this. As she left the recruitment office, Sarah could hear the murmured conversations starting up behind her. The phrases crazy girl and reality check drifted through the air, but she ignored them completely. She had expected skepticism, had been dealing with it her entire life, in fact. Her grandfather, Thomas Chun, had been the one person who never doubted her potential. A decorated veteran who had served 3 tours in Southeast Asia, he had seen something in his quiet granddaughter that others missed. While her parents worried about her lack of interest in traditionally feminine activities, Thomas had recognized a natural talent that transcended gender. Shooting isn't about strength, little bird, he used to tell her during their weekend trips to his private range. It's about patience, breath control, and the ability to be absolutely still when everything around you is chaos. Sarah had absorbed those lessons completely. By age 12, she could consistently hit targets at distances that challenged experienced hunters. By 16, she was outperforming adult competitors at local shooting competitions. But more than just marksmanship, Thomas had taught her about military history, tactics, and the mindset required for combat. The military will try to break you down before they build you up, he had warned her. They'll question whether you belong there. Some of that questioning will be legitimate. They need to know you won't crack under pressure. But some of it will be based on assumptions about what a young woman can or cannot do. You'll have to prove yourself twice as hard as any man, and even then, some people will never accept you. Now, walking through the city streets toward her apartment, Sarah reflected on those conversations. She had spent 4 years preparing for this moment. 4 years of physical conditioning, weapons training, and mental preparation. She had deliberately chosen not to attend college, much to her parents' dismay, instead dedicating herself entirely to becoming the kind of soldier she knew she could be. The apartment she returned to reflected this dedication. Instead of typical decorations for someone her age, the walls held military history books, tactical manuals, and framed photos of her grandfather in his dress uniform. Her bedroom contained little beyond the essentials: a bed, a desk covered with study materials, and a gun safe containing the weapon she had legally acquired for training purposes. Sarah opened her laptop and began researching Fort Moore, where she would report for basic training in 6 weeks. She studied the base layout, read everything she could find about the training cadre, and memorized the names and backgrounds of the drill instructors she was likely to encounter. Most importantly, she researched Master Sergeant Rodriguez, who commanded the company she had been assigned to. Rodriguez had a reputation as one of the toughest drill instructors in the Army, a man who took pride in weeding out recruits who lacked the commitment or capability for infantry service. Several online forums contained stories from former recruits about his intense training methods and his particular skepticism toward anyone who seemed to view military service as anything less than a sacred calling. Sarah smiled as she read these accounts. Rodriguez sounded exactly like the kind of instructor she wanted to train under, someone who would push her to her absolute limits and beyond. She had no interest in an easy path to military service. She wanted to earn her place among the very best soldiers, and that meant proving herself to the hardest instructors the Army had to offer. Over the following weeks, Sarah intensified her preparation routine. She woke at 4:30 each morning for a 6-mile run, followed by 2 hours of calisthenics and weight training. Afternoons were devoted to weapons practice at a local range, where she worked with every firearm she could legally access. Evenings involved studying military manuals, tactics texts, and historical accounts of small unit actions. The range owner, an ex-Marine named Peterson, had initially been amused by the serious young woman who showed up every day with military-grade equipment and civilian versions of military rifles. His amusement had quickly turned to respect as he watched her methodically work through advanced shooting drills with mechanical precision. I've trained a lot of people over the years," Peterson told her one afternoon as she cleaned her rifle with practiced efficiency. "Police, security contractors, weekend warriors. I've never seen anyone your age with your level of focus. My grandfather taught me that preparation prevents poor performance," Sarah replied, checking the rifle's bore for any remaining residue. "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. Military, Vietnam veteran, sniper with the 25th Infantry Division." Peterson nodded with sudden understanding. "That explains a lot. Those guys knew their business. But, even with all this training, the Real Army is going to be different. The pressure, the stress, the way they'll come at you mentally, it's designed to break people down." "I know," Sarah said calmly. "I'm counting on it." The night before her departure for basic training, Sarah sat in her grandfather's old chair, the one piece of furniture she had requested when he passed away 2 years earlier, and reread his final letter to her. He had given it to her parents with instructions to pass it along when she enlisted. "My dear Sarah," the letter began in his careful handwriting. "If you are reading this, it means you have chosen the path we talked about so many times. I am proud of you for following your heart, even though I know it has not been easy. You will face challenges in the coming months that have nothing to do with your ability as a soldier. People will question your presence, your commitment, and your capability. Some of this questioning will come from a place of legitimate concern. The military must know that every soldier can be trusted with the lives of their comrades. But some will come from prejudice and narrow thinking. Remember that you have nothing to prove to anyone except yourself. You know what you are capable of. I know what you are capable of. Show them through your actions, not your words. Let your performance speak so loudly that their doubts become irrelevant. Most importantly, never forget why you chose this path. It was not to prove a point about women in combat or to challenge social conventions. You chose it because you have the heart of a warrior and the skills of a professional soldier. Trust in your training, trust in your preparation, and trust in the strength I saw in you from the time you were a little girl. The Army will try to create you in their image. But the best soldiers, the ones who truly make a difference, find a way to excel within the system while staying true to who they are. You have that rare combination of technical skill, mental toughness, and moral courage that makes legendary soldiers. Be patient, be professional, be ready. And when the moment comes, and you will know when it comes, show them what Thomas Chin's granddaughter is truly capable of. With love and pride, Grandfather, Sarah folded the letter carefully and placed it in her dress uniform pocket. Tomorrow, she would begin the journey that would transform her from a dedicated civilian into a United States soldier. She had no illusions about the difficulties ahead, but she also had no doubts about her ability to overcome them. The last thing she did before bed was clean and inspect her grandfather's service pistol, a .45 caliber 1911 that he had carried through 3 combat tours. Although she wouldn't be allowed to bring it to basic training, she wanted to touch the worn grips one more time, feeling the connection to the man who had shaped her understanding of what it meant to serve. "I won't let you down, Grandfather," she whispered into the darkness. "I promise." Outside, the city slept peacefully, unaware that tomorrow one of its daughters would begin a journey that would challenge every assumption about courage, capability, and the true meaning of strength. Sarah Chun closed her eyes and began the mental countdown to the moment when she would prove that sometimes the most powerful warriors come in the most unexpected packages. The bus carrying new recruits pulled through the gates of Fort Moore at precisely 0500 hours, its brakes hissing as it came to a stop in front of a stark concrete building. Sarah had positioned herself near a window and watched the base come alive in the pre-dawn darkness. Uniformed figures moving with purpose, vehicles heading out for early training exercises, and the unmistakable sense of organized activity that marked a professional military installation. As the recruits filed off the bus, Sarah found herself the subject of curious stares and whispered comments from her fellow passengers. She had expected this and maintained her composure, keeping her expression neutral and her movements confident. The group consisted of 43 young men and herself, ratios she had researched and prepared for mentally. "Listen up, maggots!" The voice exploded from a figure who seemed to materialize from the shadows. Master Sergeant Rodriguez stood before them in perfectly pressed utilities, his bearing radiating the kind of authority that comes from years of proven leadership in challenging circumstances. At 45, he had served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and several classified operations that had earned him decorations most soldiers never even saw in person. "Form up in 4 ranks. Move it, move it, move it." The recruits scrambled to organize themselves, bumping into each other in their eagerness to comply. Sarah moved smoothly to her position in the formation, her movements economical and precise. Rodriguez's eyes swept over the group, cataloging weaknesses, assessing potential, and identifying the individuals who would require his special attention. When his gaze reached Sarah, it lingered for several seconds longer than it had on the others. She met his stare directly, neither challenging nor submissive, simply acknowledging his authority while demonstrating her own inner strength. Well, Rodriguez said, his voice carrying across the formation. "It appears the Army has decided to send me a recruit who thinks the infantry is some kind of social experiment." Several of the male recruits shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond to this development. Sarah remained perfectly still, her eyes focused straight ahead. "What's your name, recruit?" Rodriguez demanded, stepping directly in front of her. Chun, drill sergeant, Sarah replied in a clear, strong voice. Chun, what kind of combat experience do you have, Chun? None, drill sergeant. I'm here to learn. Rodriguez studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. None. Interesting. And what makes you think you belong in the infantry, Chun? I believe I have the skills and commitment necessary to serve effectively in a combat role, drill sergeant. You believe? Rodriguez's voice dripped with sarcasm. Belief is what gets soldiers killed, Chun. What matters is capability, training, and the ability to function under pressure that would make most people curl up and cry for their mothers. Yes, drill sergeant. We'll see about that. Right now, all of you are nothing. Less than nothing. You're civilians wearing uniforms you haven't earned. Over the next 16 weeks, some of you will become soldiers. Some of you will discover that you don't have what it takes and will find yourself reassigned to duties more suited to your limitations. Rodriguez began walking along the formation, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. This is not a democracy. This is not a debate society. This is the United States Army, and in the Army, we do things one way, the right way. My way. The first few days of basic training followed patterns that Sarah had studied extensively. Physical conditioning designed to stress the cardiovascular system while teaching basic military movements. Classroom instruction on military history, customs, and regulations. Initial weapons familiarization with the M4 carbine that would become their primary tool. During these initial sessions, Sarah quickly established herself as a competent recruit who followed orders precisely and performed every task to standard or above. She completed the fitness assessments in the top 5% of the company. Her knowledge of military history and regulations impressed the instructors. Most significantly, during the initial weapons handling evaluation, she demonstrated a level of familiarity with firearms that clearly exceeded anything the other recruits possessed. Staff Sergeant Martinez, the company's weapons instructor, called Rodriguez aside after the first range session. Sir, we need to talk about Recruit Chun, Martinez said quietly. Problem with her attitude? Rodriguez asked, expecting the usual complaints about soldiers who couldn't handle the pressure. No, sir. Just the opposite. She just put 48 out of 50 rounds into the inner ring at 100 meters. With iron sights. First time touching that rifle. Rodriguez frowned. Scores like that usually take weeks of training to achieve. That's what I thought too. So I had her demonstrate weapon assembly and disassembly. She field stripped that M4 faster than some soldiers who've been in the unit for months. Previous training? Extensive for what I can tell. But she's not showing off about it. Just quietly outperforming everyone else by significant margins. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. Keep an eye on her. Let me know if the performance continues. The performance did continue. During physical training, Sarah consistently finished runs in the top group despite being smaller than most of her peers. During classroom instruction, she demonstrated comprehensive knowledge of tactics and military history. During practical exercises, she showed an intuitive understanding of small unit movements and communication procedures. More importantly, from Rodriguez's perspective, she displayed the kind of mental toughness that separated real soldiers from people who simply wore uniforms. When other recruits struggled with the constant pressure and criticism that marked basic training, Sarah seemed to thrive under stress. The harder the instructors pushed, the more focused and determined she became. The first real test came during the third week of training, when the company was introduced to tactical field exercises. Rodriguez had designed a particular scenario that had broken several previous classes, a night navigation exercise through difficult terrain while carrying full combat equipment. The recruits were divided into teams of 4 and given coordinates to reach within a specified time limit. Failure meant repeating the exercise until everyone succeeded, which typically resulted in multiple sleepless nights and growing resentment within the group. Sarah found herself teamed with 3 recruits who had already begun to struggle with the physical demands of training. Jackson, a 20-year-old from rural Kentucky, had excellent survival skills, but poor physical conditioning. Morrison, a college graduate from California, had outstanding analytical abilities, but struggled with practical applications. Williams, an 18-year-old from Detroit, had street smarts and natural leadership qualities, but lacked the technical knowledge required for complex operations. As the teams prepared for the exercise, Rodriguez positioned himself where he could observe Sarah's team without being seen. He was particularly curious about how she would handle leadership responsibilities when officially she held no rank or authority over her teammates. "All right," Jackson said as they studied their map. "We need to hit these 3 checkpoints and reach the final objective before 0300 hours. That gives us about 5 hours for what looks like maybe 8 miles of movement." Through some pretty rough terrain, Morrison added nervously, "And carrying all this equipment." Williams looked at the map with obvious frustration. "Man, I can read street maps all day long, but this topographical stuff might as well be written in Chinese." Sarah had been listening quietly while studying the map herself. Now, she spoke up for the first time. "Williams, you're right that topographical maps are different from street maps, but the principles are the same. You're looking for landmarks, distances, and the most efficient route between points." She traced her finger along the map, pointing out key features. "See these contour lines? They show elevation changes. Closed together means steep terrain, spread apart means gentle slopes. We want to avoid unnecessary elevation changes because they'll slow us down and tire us out." Jackson looked at her with surprise. "You know about land navigation?" "Some," Sarah replied modestly. "My grandfather taught me orienteering when I was young." "Thank God," Morrison muttered, "because I was about to suggest we just start walking and hope for the best." Sarah smiled briefly. "That's not a terrible backup plan, but we could do better. Look, here's what I think we should do." She outlined a route that would avoid the steepest terrain while hitting all the required checkpoints in logical sequence. More importantly, she explained her reasoning in terms that made sense to each team member, drawing parallels to concepts they already understood. "Jackson, think of it like hunting. You wouldn't charge straight through the thickest brush if there was a game trail that got you to the same place with less effort. Morrison, it's like planning the most efficient route for multiple stops in a city. You organize them logically to minimize backtracking. Williams, treat each checkpoint like a landmark in a neighborhood. Once you can visualize the relationship between them, the whole route becomes clear." The exercise began at 2,200 hours, and Rodriguez followed the teams at a distance, using night vision equipment to monitor their progress. Most of the teams immediately encountered difficulties: wrong turns, equipment problems, arguments about navigation, and the general confusion that marked inexperienced soldiers operating in darkness. Sarah's team moved differently. They maintained proper spacing, used correct hand signals for communication, and navigated with confidence toward their first checkpoint. When Morrison stumbled under the weight of his equipment, the others redistributed the load without being asked. When Jackson's natural woodscraft skills proved valuable in identifying terrain features in the darkness, Sarah made sure to acknowledge his contributions and incorporate his observations into their navigation. Most impressively, they reached each checkpoint ahead of schedule while maintaining the energy and morale necessary to continue performing effectively. Rodriguez found himself genuinely surprised by what he was observing. Sarah wasn't just performing well individually. She was making her entire team perform better. Without holding any official authority, she had somehow become the team's natural leader through competence, communication, and genuine concern for her teammates' success. At the halfway point of the exercise, Rodriguez decided to increase the pressure. Using his radio, he contacted the exercise controllers and had them inject a complication into the scenario, a simulated injury to one of Sarah's teammates that would require them to complete the mission while providing medical care and carrying additional equipment. The message came through their radio at 0100 hours. Team 4, be advised that team member Morrison has sustained a simulated ankle injury and cannot walk without assistance. Adjust your timeline and procedures accordingly. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Jackson immediately looked frustrated. Great. Now we're never going to make the deadline. Williams shook his head. Maybe we should signal for extraction and take the failure. Sarah knelt beside Morrison, who was playing his role by limping and showing obvious discomfort. How bad is it supposed to be? She asked quietly. Complete weight-bearing restrictions, Morrison replied. I can move with help, but not quickly. Sarah studied their remaining route and checked her watch. They had less than 2 hours to cover almost 4 miles of terrain while essentially carrying a team member. Most teams would either abandon the mission or exhaust themselves trying to maintain the original timeline. Here's what we're going to do, Sarah said calmly. We're going to modify our route to take advantage of easier terrain, even if it means covering more distance. Jackson, you've got the best outdoors experience. I want you to scout about 50 meters ahead and identify the easiest path. Williams, you, and I will support Morrison between us. We'll move at a steady pace we can maintain, rather than rushing and burning ourselves out. But the timeline, Jackson started. We'll make the timeline, Sarah interrupted confidently. Trust me, what happened next would later become part of the training folklore at Fort Moore. Sarah's team not only completed the mission on time, but did so while maintaining better unit cohesion and higher morale than any of the other teams. When they reached the final checkpoint, Morrison was tired but in good spirits. Jackson and Williams were functioning effectively despite the additional challenges, and Sarah looked like she could continue the exercise for several more hours if necessary. Rodriguez met them at the final checkpoint, his expression carefully neutral. Report, Chun. Mission accomplished, Drill Sergeant. All checkpoints reached within the specified timeline. No porcentaje cachuetis. Equipment accountability 100%. Rodriguez nodded slowly. How did you manage to maintain the timeline with an injured team member? Route modification to take advantage of easier terrain, load redistribution to optimize team capabilities, and steady pacing to prevent exhaustion. Drill Sergeant. Whose idea was the route modification? Team decision, Drill Sergeant, based on input from all team members. Rodriguez looked at the other 3 recruits. Is that accurate? Yes, Drill Sergeant, they replied in unison. But Rodriguez could see the truth in their faces. Sarah had led them through the exercise with skill that exceeded anything he typically saw from recruits. More concerning from his perspective, she had done it without drawing attention to herself or undermining her teammates' confidence. As the teams returned to barracks, Rodriguez found himself reconsidering his initial assessment of recruitment. Whatever training she had received before entering the Army, it was clearly more comprehensive than typical civilian preparation. The question was whether her current performance would continue under increasing pressure or whether she would eventually reach her limits like every other recruit. He decided to find out exactly what those limits might be. By the 6th week of basic training, Sarah had established herself as the unofficial leader among the recruits, though she carried this responsibility with characteristic modesty. Her performance in every category remained consistently excellent, but, more importantly, the soldiers around her had begun performing better as well. Rodriguez had noticed that discipline problems decreased when Sarah was present. Training scores improved across her platoon, and morale remained high even during the most challenging exercises. This development concerned Rodriguez more than poor performance would have. In his experience, recruits who excelled too easily often struggled when they eventually encountered genuine challenges. The Army needed soldiers who could function effectively when everything went wrong, not just when conditions favored their particular strengths. He decided to design a test specifically intended to break Sarah's composure and reveal whatever weaknesses might exist beneath her professional exterior. The opportunity came during advanced marksmanship training, when a company was introduced to precision shooting at extended ranges. Most recruits struggled with the technical demands of engaging targets beyond 300 meters, requiring weeks of instruction to achieve basic competency. Rodriguez arranged for the company's senior marksmanship instructor, Master Sergeant Patricia Kowalski, to visit from the Advanced Infantry School. Kowalski had served as a sniper instructor for over a decade and had trained some of the Army's most capable precision shooters. Her reputation for identifying and developing exceptional marksmen was matched only by her reputation for ruthlessly weeding out soldiers who lacked the temperament for precision weapons. Today you will be evaluated on your ability to engage targets at distances that require real skill, Kowalski announced to the assembled recruits. This is not the basic marksmanship you've been practicing. This requires mastery of fundamentals, understanding of ballistics, and the mental discipline to perform under pressure. She gestured toward a range that stretched out to 600 meters, with targets positioned at various distances and under different conditions. Each recruit will engage 10 targets at ranges from 200 to 600 meters. You'll be evaluated on accuracy, speed, and your ability to adapt to changing conditions. The recruits lined up to take their turns, and Rodriguez positioned himself where he could observe Sarah's performance without being obvious about his special interest. Most soldiers managed to hit perhaps half of their targets at the closer ranges and struggled significantly with anything beyond 400 meters. When Sarah's turn came, she approached the firing line with the same calm professionalism she had displayed throughout training. Kowalski handed her a precision rifle, a .308 caliber weapon significantly more powerful and complex than the M4 carbine the recruits had been training with. Ever fired anything like this before, recruit? Kowalski asked. Similar weapons, instructor, but not this exact model, Sarah replied, examining the rifle with obvious familiarity. Show me your fundamentals. Sarah assumed a prone position behind the weapon, demonstrating textbook shooting posture. Her breathing pattern was controlled and consistent. Her trigger control was smooth and deliberate, and her natural point of aim required minimal adjustment. Engage target 1, Kowalski commanded. The first target stood at 200 meters, an easy shot for an experienced shooter, but challenging for a recruit using an unfamiliar weapon. Sarah took her time to establish proper sight picture, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger with mechanical precision. The target snapped backward as the bullet struck center mass. Target 2. The second target was positioned at 300 meters, partially concealed behind simulated cover. Sarah made minor adjustments to her scope, calculated the holdover required for the increased distance, and fired again. Another solid hit. As the targets progressed to greater distances and more challenging conditions, Sarah's performance not only remained consistent, but seemed to improve. By the time she reached the 600-meter targets, shots that challenged experienced soldiers, she was placing rounds with surgical precision. Kowalski watched in silence as Sarah engaged her final target, a silhouette positioned at the maximum range in a crosswind that had caused most recruits to miss by several feet. Sarah took nearly a minute to prepare this shot, reading the wind conditions, calculating the necessary adjustments, and timing her shot for a lull in the breeze. The bullet struck the target dead center. "Cease fire," Kowalski called, though her voice carried a note of surprise. "Clear your weapon and stand by for evaluation." Rodriguez approached the firing line as Sarah completed the required safety procedures. Her performance had been so exceptional that several other recruits had stopped their own training to watch, creating an audience that made Rodriguez uncomfortable. 10 targets, 10 hits, Kowalski reported quietly. 6 of them would qualify as expert-level shots. I've seen career snipers perform worse than this recruit just did. Rodriguez felt a mix of impressment and concern. Previous training has to be extensive, Kowalski replied. But she's not just repeating learned behaviors. She adapted to this weapon system and these conditions like someone with genuine understanding of the principles involved. "Chun," Rodriguez called sharply. "Front and center." Sarah approached and stood at attention. "Yes, drill sergeant. Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather taught me marksmanship, drill sergeant." "Your grandfather must have been quite a teacher." "Yes, drill sergeant. He was." Rodriguez studied her for a long moment, aware that the other recruits were listening to every word. "What was your grandfather's military background?" "Sniper, 25th Infantry Division, Vietnam-era drill sergeant." That explained a great deal. The 25th Infantry Snipers had been legendary for their effectiveness in jungle warfare, and their training methods had influenced modern sniper programs throughout the military. Did your grandfather teach you anything else besides marksmanship? He taught me that being a soldier means more than just individual skills, drill sergeant. He taught me about responsibility, teamwork, and putting the mission before personal considerations. Rodriguez nodded slowly. We'll see about that. Dismissed. As Sarah returned to the group, Rodriguez found himself facing an unusual problem. Her performance was so consistently excellent that it was beginning to affect group dynamics in ways that could become problematic. Some recruits were clearly intimidated by her capabilities, while others seemed to be developing an unhealthy dependence on her leadership. More concerning was the possibility that Sarah's exceptional preparation might actually handicap her development as a soldier. The Army's training system was designed to break down civilian thought patterns and rebuild them according to military standards. But Sarah's civilian training appeared to have already instilled many military-appropriate thought patterns, making it unclear whether the normal training progression would be effective for her. That evening, Rodriguez reviewed Sarah's complete file for the first time since her arrival. What he found surprised him. Her grandfather, Thomas Chun, had been more than just a sniper. He had been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for actions in which he had single-handedly eliminated an enemy position that was preventing the evacuation of wounded American soldiers. After the war, he had worked as a civilian marksmanship instructor for several law enforcement agencies and had written articles for professional military publications. The training Sarah had received wasn't just extensive. It was essentially a private military education provided by a decorated combat veteran who understood exactly what skills would be required for effective military service. Rodriguez closed the file and considered his options. He could continue putting Sarah through normal basic training procedures, but that seemed increasingly pointless given her obvious preparation and capability. He could recommend her for accelerated advancement, but that might create resentment among her peers and undermine unit cohesion. Or he could design more challenging tests that would either reveal her limits or confirm that she was genuinely exceptional. The decision was made for him 3 days later when the company received orders for an unexpected field training exercise. A senior officer was visiting the base and wanted to observe advanced training scenarios that would demonstrate the quality of soldiers being produced by current training methods. The exercise would involve live-fire tactical scenarios, advanced navigation challenges, and leadership evaluations under stress. More significantly, it would be observed by Colonel Harrison, a veteran infantry officer who had commanded units in multiple combat deployments and who had a reputation for identifying soldiers with exceptional potential. Rodriguez saw this as the perfect opportunity to determine exactly what Sarah Chun was capable of under genuine pressure. The exercise began before dawn on a Monday morning, with the recruits being transported to a remote training area that simulated the kind of complex terrain they might encounter in actual combat operations. They were divided into squad-sized units and given tactical problems that required them to work together under increasingly difficult conditions. Sarah found herself assigned as the automatic weapons specialist for a squad led by Recruit Thompson, a former college football player who had struggled with the intellectual demands of military training, but who possessed natural leadership qualities and excellent physical capabilities. The squad's first mission was to advance through simulated enemy territory and establish an observation post overlooking a key intersection. The exercise controllers had designed the scenario to include multiple complications, equipment failures, casualty simulation, and time pressure that would force the squad to make difficult decisions quickly. Rodriguez and Colonel Harrison positioned themselves where they could observe the exercise without interfering, using radio communications to monitor the squad's progress and decision-making processes. "Which unit would you like to focus on, Colonel?" Rodriguez asked. "Let's watch that squad over there," Harrison replied, pointing towards Sarah's unit. "I'm curious about their automatic weapons specialist. Something about her movements suggests more training than I'd expect from a basic recruit." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "That's Chun, sir. She's been interesting to work with. As they watched Sarah's squad encounter their first significant challenge, the squad leader, Thompson, had led them into a position where they were exposed to simulated enemy fire from multiple directions. According to the exercise rules, 2 squad members were now casualties, and the remaining soldiers had to complete their mission while providing medical care and carrying additional equipment. Thompson looked genuinely panicked as he realized the tactical situation had deteriorated beyond his ability to manage effectively. "Chun," he called desperately, "what do you think we should do?" Sarah immediately moved to a position where she could assess the entire situation. "First priority is getting these casualties to cover," she said calmly. "Williams, help me move Morrison behind that ridge. Jackson, you and Thompson provide covering fire if needed." As they repositioned the wounded soldiers, Sarah continued issuing clear, logical instructions that gradually restored order to the chaotic situation. "Thompson, once we're all in cover, I recommend we reassess our route to the objective. This position is compromised, but we might be able to approach from the north and still complete the mission." Harrison watched with growing interest as Sarah essentially took control of the squad without officially superseding Thompson's authority. She presented her ideas as suggestions, asked for Thompson's approval before implementing major decisions, and made sure that Thompson received credit for successful outcomes. "She's managing both the tactical situation and the leadership dynamics," Harrison observed quietly. "That's sophisticated thinking for a basic recruit." The squad successfully completed their first mission and was immediately given a second, more challenging scenario. This time, they were required to clear a simulated building while maintaining security and searching for intelligence materials. Urban warfare scenarios were among the most dangerous training exercises because they required soldiers to work in close quarters while maintaining awareness of multiple potential threats. Most recruits struggled with the complex coordination and communication required for effective building clearance. Sarah's squad approached the building with obvious nervousness. Thompson had received basic instruction in urban tactics, but he lacked the confidence to implement those lessons under pressure. "Chun," he said quietly, "you seem to understand this stuff better than I do. What should we do?" Sarah studied the building for a moment, then began explaining the principles of systematic building clearance. "We need to maintain security on all sides while we're inside. Each room has to be cleared completely before we move to the next one. Communication is critical. Everyone needs to know where everyone else is at all times." She sketched a quick diagram in the dirt. "Thompson, I suggest we use a standard 4-man entry technique. You and Williams take the initial entry, Jackson provides rear security, and I'll handle communication and coordinate with anyone providing external security." Harrison leaned forward with obvious interest. "Rodriguez, how much urban warfare training have your recruits received at this point?" "Basic concepts only, sir. They shouldn't have a knowledge base for this level of tactical planning." As they watched, Sarah's squad began their building clearance with a level of coordination that exceeded anything Harrison had seen for basic recruits. They moved methodically from room to room, maintained proper positioning, and communicated effectively throughout the process. More importantly, Sarah continued to ensure that Thompson maintained his official authority while providing the technical expertise necessary for success. When they discovered the simulated intelligence materials, she made sure Thompson was the one who reported their findings to the exercise controllers. "Outstanding work, squad leader," the exercise controller radioed to Thompson. "Textbook building clearance with no safety violations and complete objective accomplishment." Thompson grinned with obvious pride and relief. "Thank you, sir." As the squad prepared for their next mission, Harrison turned to Rodriguez with a thoughtful expression. "That recruit, Chun, she's not just performing well individually. She's making her entire squad perform at a higher level." "Yes, sir. I've noticed that pattern throughout her training." "What's her background?" Rodriguez summarized what he knew about Sarah's preparation and family history. Harrison listened with growing interest, particularly when Rodriguez described her grandfather's military service and his role in providing her training. So she essentially received private military education from a decorated combat veteran, Harrison mused. That explains the performance level, but not the leadership maturity. That's something that usually develops through experience, not just training. The final phase of the exercise was designed to push the recruits to their absolute limits. Each squad was given a complex mission that required them to integrate all their training: navigation, marksmanship, tactics, leadership, and decision-making under extreme stress. Sarah's squad was tasked with conducting a simulated rescue operation in which they had to locate and extract a downed pilot from hostile territory while avoiding multiple enemy positions and completing the mission within a strict time limit. The scenario was intentionally designed to be nearly impossible for basic recruits to complete successfully. Most squads were expected to fail at some point, providing valuable lessons about limitations and the importance of realistic mission planning. Thompson looked at the mission briefing with obvious anxiety. "This is way more complex than anything we've done before," he admitted to his squad. Sarah studied the map and timeline carefully. "It is complex," she agreed, "but it's not impossible if we approach it systematically." Over the next few minutes, she helped Thompson break down the mission into manageable phases, identified the critical decision points where timing would be crucial, and developed contingency plans for likely complications. "The key is maintaining flexibility," she explained. "We have a primary plan, but we need to be ready to adapt if conditions change." What happened during the actual mission exceeded everyone's expectations. Sarah's squad not only completed the rescue successfully, but did so ahead of schedule while maintaining security and demonstrating tactical proficiency that impressed the exercise controllers. When Thompson reported mission completion to the controllers, his voice carried genuine confidence rather than the relief that usually marks successful basic training exercises. Harrison watched the after-action review with growing amazement. "Rodriguez, in 23 years of military service, I've never seen a basic recruit perform like this. She's been exceptional from day one, sir." "No, it's more than just exceptional individual performance. She's somehow managing to elevate everyone around her without undermining their confidence or creating dependency. That's a rare leadership quality that usually takes years to develop." Harrison paused for a moment, considering his words carefully. "I want to see something. For their final exercise, I want you to give her squad a mission that specifically requires advanced marksmanship under pressure. Something that will test whether her shooting ability holds up when lives depend on it." Rodriguez nodded understanding. "I can arrange that, sir." "And Rodriguez, I want to be there to observe personally. I have a feeling we're about to witness something remarkable." As the day's exercises concluded, Sarah helped her squad clean their equipment and prepare for the return to base. She remained characteristically modest about their success, crediting Thompson's leadership and the entire squad's teamwork. But Rodriguez could see something different in her bearing, a quiet confidence that suggested she was ready for whatever challenges might come next. Tomorrow would bring the most demanding test of her training, and for the first time since her arrival, Rodriguez found himself genuinely curious about the outcome rather than confident in his ability to predict how she would perform. Colonel Harrison's interest in observing the next exercise suggested that Sarah Chin's military career might be about to take a very unexpected turn. The final exercise was scheduled for Friday morning, and Rodriguez spent Thursday evening designing a scenario that would test every aspect of Sarah's capabilities under maximum stress. Colonel Harrison had specifically requested a mission that would require precision marksmanship in support of squad tactics, creating conditions where individual excellence would directly impact team survival. The scenario Rodriguez developed was based on actual combat operations from recent conflicts. Sarah's squad would be tasked with rescuing hostages from a fortified position while enemy snipers provided overwatch from concealed positions at ranges exceeding 400 meters. One member of the rescue team would need to neutralize the enemy snipers before the assault could proceed safely. Thursday night, Sarah performed her usual equipment maintenance and mental preparation routine. She had sensed the increased attention from the training cadre and understood that tomorrow's exercise would be more significant than routine training. Her grandfather had taught her to recognize such moments, times when performance would be evaluated by people who could influence the direction of her career. The military is always testing you, Thomas Chun had explained during one of their training sessions. Sometimes they tell you it's a test, and sometimes they don't. But the tests that matter most are usually the ones where real leaders are watching to see what you're capable of under genuine pressure. Sarah cleaned her assigned rifle with particular care, checking every component and ensuring that her equipment was in perfect condition. She reviewed her notes on ballistics and wind estimation, studied photographs of the training area to identify likely shooting positions, and mentally rehearsed the procedure she would follow for engaging targets at extended range. Most importantly, she considered how to integrate her individual performance with her squad's collective mission. Her grandfather had emphasized that the most effective soldiers were those who could excel individually while making their unit stronger rather than creating dependency. Friday morning arrived with overcast skies and variable winds, conditions that would make long-range shooting significantly more challenging. As the squad prepared for their mission briefing, Rodriguez noted that several senior officers had arrived to observe the exercise, including Colonel Harrison and Lieutenant Colonel Martinez from the Special Operations Command. Sarah recognized the significance of having Special Operations officers observing a basic training exercise. Her grandfather had explained that such attention usually indicated either exceptional performance or serious concern about a soldier's potential. The mission briefing was conducted in a formal classroom setting rather than the informal field briefings the recruits had grown accustomed to. Staff Sergeant Williams presented the scenario with military precision, using detailed maps and tactical graphics to explain the situation. Intelligence reports indicate that 3 civilian contractors are being held in this compound, Williams began, indicating a cluster of buildings on the tactical map. Enemy strength is estimated at 12 fighters, including at least 3 snipers positioned in elevated positions around the compound. He pointed to marked locations on the map. These sniper positions command the approaches to the compound and must be neutralized before the assault team can advance safely. The mission requires coordination between the assault element and supporting fires to ensure successful hostage rescue with minimal casualties. Sarah studied the map carefully, noting the distances involved and the terrain features that would affect both approach routes and shooting positions. The enemy sniper locations were positioned at ranges between 300 and 500 meters, challenging shots under ideal conditions, extremely difficult shots given the weather and tactical pressure. Thompson raised his hand. "Sir, how are we supposed to deal with enemy snipers? We're not trained for counter-sniper operations." "That's a valid concern," Williams replied. "However, every infantry squad should be capable of providing precision fires in support of tactical operations. One member of your squad will be designated as the marksman and will be responsible for neutralizing the enemy snipers while the rest of the squad conducts the assault." Rodriguez watched Sarah's expression carefully as the implications became clear. The exercise had been designed to require exactly the type of specialized skill she possessed, creating a scenario where her individual capabilities would be essential for mission success. Colonel Harrison leaned forward slightly, his attention focused on how the squad would assign responsibilities for the most challenging aspects of the mission. "Thompson," Williams continued, "you need to designate your squad marksman and develop a plan for coordinating supporting fires with the assault." Thompson looked around at his squad members, his expression reflecting genuine concern about the complexity of the mission. Jackson and Williams were competent soldiers, but neither had demonstrated exceptional marksmanship skills. Morrison had improved significantly during training, but his performance under stress remained inconsistent. "Chun," Thompson said finally, "you're our best shot. Are you comfortable taking responsibility for the sniper positions?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "I can handle the marksmanship requirements, but success depends on the entire squad working together. We need to coordinate timing, communications, and mutual support." "What do you need from us?" Thompson asked. Sarah moved to the tactical map and began outlining her assessment of the situation. First, I need to get into a position with clear sight lines to all three enemy positions. Based on this terrain, I recommend this location here. She pointed to a small hill that offered elevation and concealment. From there, I can engage all three targets, but I'll need the squad to provide security and communication. She traced potential approach routes with her finger. The assault team should be ready to advance immediately after I engage the last sniper. The enemy will know their overwatch is compromised, so timing is critical. Thompson nodded, his confidence growing as Sarah explained her tactical reasoning. How long will you need to neutralize all three positions? Under these conditions, probably 2 to 3 minutes for all three shots. I'll need time to range each target and account for wind conditions. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez leaned over to Colonel Harrison. She's discussing this like someone with actual combat experience, he observed quietly. Harrison nodded. Let's see if her performance matches her tactical understanding. The exercise began 30 minutes later, with Sarah's squad being transported to a starting position approximately 1 kilometer from their objective. They had 2 hours to complete the mission, including movement to contact, neutralization of enemy snipers, assault on the compound, and extraction with the simulated hostages. Sarah carried a precision rifle system similar to those used by military snipers, along with a spotting scope and range-finding equipment. The weapon was significantly heavier and more complex than anything the other recruits had trained with, but she handled it with obvious familiarity. During the approach march, Sarah used terrain features to remain concealed while maintaining visual contact with the enemy positions. Her movement was economical and professional, demonstrating fieldcraft skills that exceeded basic training instruction. Thompson led the squad along a route that would bring them into assault position while keeping them concealed from the enemy snipers. His leadership had improved dramatically over the course of training, and he now moved with confidence while coordinating his team's activities. Rodriguez and the observing officers followed at a distance, using radio communications to monitor the squad's progress and decision-making process. Movement looks professional, Colonel Harrison observed. They're maintaining proper spacing, using available cover effectively, and communicating appropriately. When the squad reached their preliminary position, Sarah separated from the group to move into her designated shooting location. She established her position carefully, using natural cover and camouflage to remain invisible to the enemy positions. Through her spotting scope, she could see all three simulated enemy snipers positioned at their designated locations. Exercise controllers were using mannequins equipped with electronic sensors to simulate enemy personnel, allowing for realistic training while maintaining safety standards. The first target was positioned at approximately 350 meters, partially concealed behind simulated cover. Sarah took her time to establish a proper shooting position, adjusted her scope for the distance and wind conditions, and controlled her breathing as she prepared to engage. Through her radio, she heard Thompson coordinating the assault team's final preparations. Marksman, this is squad leader. Assault team is in position and ready to advance on your signal. Squad leader, this is Marksman, Sarah replied calmly. I have visual on all three targets. Beginning engagement sequence now. The first shot broke the morning silence with a sharp crack that echoed across the training area. The electronic sensor on the first target activated immediately, indicating a successful hit. Sarah smoothly transitioned to the second target, located at 420 meters in an elevated position that required her to adjust for both distance and angle. The wind had shifted slightly, requiring additional compensation in her aiming point. The second shot followed 15 seconds after the first, and again the target's sensors confirmed a direct hit. The third target presented the most challenging shot, 490 meters range, partially obscured by vegetation, with a crosswind that had been variable throughout the morning. Sarah took nearly a minute to prepare this final shot, carefully reading the wind conditions and calculating the precise holdover required. When she fired, there was a brief pause before the target's electronic system activated, indicating another successful engagement. Squad leader, all targets neutralized, Sarah reported. Assault team clear to advance. Thompson immediately led his team toward the compound, moving with tactical precision while Sarah provided overwatch from her position. The assault proceeded exactly as planned, with a hostage rescue being completed successfully within the specified time limit. As the exercise concluded, Rodriguez found himself struggling to process what he had just witnessed. Sarah had not only performed 3 exceptionally difficult precision shots under tactical pressure, but had done so as part of a coordinated team operation that required split-second timing and flawless communication. Colonel Harrison and Lieutenant Colonel Martinez approached Sarah's position as she completed her post-exercise equipment checks. "Outstanding shooting, soldier," Harrison said, using the term deliberately rather than the usual recruit. "Thank you, sir," Sarah replied, standing at attention. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather provided extensive marksmanship training, sir." Martinez studied her for a moment. "What was your grandfather's military occupational specialty?" "Sniper, sir. 25th Infantry Division." The two officers exchanged meaningful glances. The 25th Infantry Sniper Program had produced some of the most effective precision marksmen in military history, and their training methods had influenced modern special operations programs. "How long have you been shooting at this level?" Harrison asked. "Approximately 10 years, sir, though my training became more intensive during the past 4 years." 10 years, Martinez repeated thoughtfully. "That explains the performance level." Harrison nodded slowly. "Chin, what are your career goals in the Army?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I want to serve in a capacity where I can make the most significant contribution to mission success, sir. My grandfather taught me that every soldier has a responsibility to develop their capabilities to the fullest extent possible. And if that meant assignment to specialized units with additional training requirements, I would welcome any opportunity to serve at a higher level, sir." Harrison looked at Rodriguez. "Master Sergeant, I want to speak with you privately after we complete the after-action review." The formal after-action review was conducted in front of all the recruits, with staff commenting on various aspects of the exercise performance. Sarah's shooting was praised as exceptional, but the emphasis was placed on the entire squad's coordination and teamwork. Thompson was commended for effective leadership under pressure, and the other squad members were recognized for their contributions to mission success. Sarah received praise for her marksmanship, but also for her ability to integrate individual skills with team operations. After the recruits were dismissed, Harrison, Martinez, and Rodriguez remained for a private discussion. "Rodriguez, how would you assess Chen's overall potential?" Harrison asked directly. "Sir, she's the most naturally capable soldier I've encountered in 15 years of training recruits. Her individual skills are exceptional, but more importantly, she makes everyone around her perform better. Any concerns about her suitability for continued military service?" "None, sir. She demonstrates every quality we want in professional soldiers: technical competence, leadership ability, moral courage, and commitment to team success." Martinez nodded approvingly. "Harrison, I think we need to have a conversation with Special Operations Command about this recruit." "Agreed," Harrison replied. "Rodriguez, I want you to prepare a detailed assessment of Chen's capabilities and performance throughout basic training. Include recommendations for advanced training opportunities that would best utilize her skills." "Yes, sir." "And Rodriguez? This assessment is classified until further notice. Chen is not to be informed about potential special assignment until all evaluations are complete." As the officers departed, Rodriguez found himself contemplating the remarkable transformation he had witnessed over the past 16 weeks. Sarah Chun had entered basic training as an exceptionally prepared recruit and was completing it as someone who clearly belonged in much more challenging assignments. More significantly, she had demonstrated that individual excellence and team leadership were not contradictory qualities, but could be integrated into a style of military service that elevated everyone's performance. Rodriguez realized that he was about to recommend Sarah for opportunities that would take her far beyond basic infantry service and into the kind of specialized assignments where her unique combination of skills could make a real difference in critical military operations. The quiet young woman who had faced skepticism and doubt at the recruitment office was about to discover that exceptional preparation, unwavering dedication, and genuine leadership ability would open doors to possibilities she had never imagined. 3 weeks after the final exercise, Sarah was completing her last days of basic training when Rodriguez summoned her to his office for what he described as a routine administrative meeting. She reported as instructed, unsure why such a meeting would be necessary so close to graduation. Rodriguez's office was spartanly decorated with military memorabilia, unit citations, and photographs from his various deployments. Sarah had been in this office only once before, during her initial processing, and she noticed that several new items had appeared, documents that looked official and important. "Have a seat, Chun," Rodriguez said, his tone more informal than she had heard throughout training. "Yes, drill sergeant. Actually, you can drop the drill sergeant routine for this conversation. We need to discuss some opportunities that have become available to you." Sarah felt a flutter of anticipation mixed with concern. Opportunities in the military could mean many different things, and she had learned to be cautious about unexpected changes to established plans. Rodriguez opened a folder and removed several documents. "First, I want to congratulate you on completing basic training with the highest overall scores in your class. Your performance has been exceptional in every category we measure." "Thank you, Drill Sergeant Rodriguez," Sarah corrected herself. "More importantly, your performance has attracted attention from some very senior people. Colonel Harrison and Lieutenant Colonel Martinez have been discussing your potential for advanced assignments." Sarah remained silent, waiting for Rodriguez to explain what this meant for her immediate future. "Tell me something, Chun. When you enlisted, what were your long-term career goals?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I wanted to serve in a combat role where I could contribute effectively to mission success. I hope to develop my capabilities and take on increasing responsibility over time. And if I told you that there were opportunities available immediately that would allow you to serve at a much higher level than typical new soldiers, I would be honored to be considered for such opportunities, but I would want to understand what would be expected of me." Rodriguez smiled slightly. That's exactly the kind of response they were hoping to hear. He opened another folder and removed a document marked with security classifications that Sarah had never seen before. "What I'm about to discuss with you is classified information. You cannot share any details with other recruits or anyone else without specific authorization." "I understand. The Army has several specialized units that recruit personnel with exceptional capabilities for missions that require skills beyond those of conventional infantry soldiers. These units look for people who demonstrate not just technical competence, but also the kind of judgment and leadership ability you've shown throughout training." Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she began to understand the direction of this conversation. "One such unit has expressed interest in your potential. They conduct missions that require precision marksmanship, small unit operations, and the ability to function independently in challenging environments." Rodriguez paused to let this information sink in. The selection process is extremely demanding, and most candidates who attempt it fail to complete training successfully. However, based on your performance here, the assessment team believes you have the potential to succeed. "What kind of unit?" Sarah asked quietly. "I can't provide specific details about their mission or organization. What I can tell you is that service with this unit would involve additional training that would last approximately 8 months, followed by assignment to operations that would utilize your specialized skills." Sarah's mind raced as she considered the implications. Specialized units meant elite soldiers, challenging missions, and the kind of service her grandfather had described as the highest form of military commitment. "What would I need to do to be considered?" The selection process begins immediately after you complete basic training. Instead of proceeding to your originally assigned infantry training, you would report to a different location for evaluation and initial assessment. Rodriguez studied her expression carefully. I want to be clear about something, Chun. This opportunity comes with significant risks. The training is designed to push candidates beyond their limits, and failure means return to conventional assignments with no guarantee of future opportunities for specialized service. I understand. More importantly, success means commitment to a type of service that will place extraordinary demands on your skills, your judgment, and your personal life. The soldiers in these units serve where others cannot, do what others cannot do, and accept responsibilities that most people cannot handle. Sarah thought about her grandfather's stories of difficult missions, moral challenges, and the weight of decisions that could affect the lives of fellow soldiers and innocent civilians. She had spent years preparing herself mentally for exactly this kind of responsibility. Rodriguez, may I ask you a direct question? Go ahead. Do you believe I'm ready for this type of challenge? Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, considering his words carefully. Chun, in 15 years of training soldiers, I've never seen anyone demonstrate your combination of technical skill, mental toughness, and leadership ability. If anyone can succeed in this type of assignment, you can. He paused, his expression becoming more serious. But I also want you to understand that accepting this opportunity means leaving behind the normal military career path. You won't serve in conventional units with regular promotion schedules and predictable assignments. You'll be part of a very small, very exclusive community of soldiers who operate outside the standard military structure. Sarah nodded slowly. My grandfather told me that the most meaningful service often requires sacrificing conventional expectations about military careers. Your grandfather was a wise man, Rodriguez agreed. What's your decision? Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. Years of preparation, months of training, and the consistent support of instructors who had recognized her potential even when others doubted her capabilities. Most importantly, she thought about the letter her grandfather had written, with its emphasis on serving at the highest level possible and making a meaningful contribution to missions that truly mattered. I want to accept the opportunity, she said firmly. Rodriguez smiled and reached for his phone. Colonel Harrison, this is Master Sergeant Rodriguez. Chun has accepted the offer. Yes, sir. She understands the requirements. Roger that. I'll have her ready for transport tomorrow morning. He hung up the phone and turned back to Sarah. You'll depart at 0600 tomorrow for the initial assessment phase. You're authorized to pack only essential personal items. Everything else will be provided at your new location. Where am I going? That information will be provided when you arrive. What I can tell you is that you'll be joining a group of candidates from various military backgrounds, all of whom have demonstrated exceptional capabilities in their previous assignments. Rodriguez stood and extended his hand. Chun, it's been an honor training you. You've exceeded every expectation and proven that sometimes exceptional soldiers come from the most unexpected backgrounds. Sarah shook his hand firmly. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to prove myself, and for pushing me to perform at my best. That's what drill sergeants are for, Rodriguez replied with a slight smile. Good luck in your new assignment. I have a feeling we'll be hearing about your accomplishments for years to come. As Sarah prepared to leave, Rodriguez called her name one more time. Chun, yes. Your grandfather would be proud of what you've accomplished and the path you're choosing. You're honoring his legacy in the best possible way. Sarah felt emotions she had kept carefully controlled throughout training beginning to surface. Thank you. That means more to me than you know. The next morning, Sarah stood outside the barracks at 0600 hours with a single duffel bag containing her personal items. A black sedan waited at the curb, its windows tinted and its occupants invisible from outside. As she approached the vehicle, the rear door opened and a voice called, Chun? Yes, get in. We have a flight to catch. Sarah climbed into the sedan and found herself sitting across from a woman in civilian clothes who appeared to be in her 30s. The woman's bearing and demeanor immediately suggested military background, though she wore no obvious indicators of rank or service. I'm Major Phillips, the woman said as the sedan pulled away from the base. I'll be your escort for today's travel. Once we reach our destination, I'll brief you on what to expect during the initial assessment phase. Thank you, ma'am. Phillips studied Sarah with obvious interest. I've read your file and the reports from your basic training. Impressive performance across the board. I had excellent instruction. Yes, Master Sergeant Rodriguez speaks very highly of your potential. But you should know that high recommendations from basic training instructors don't guarantee success in advanced selection programs. The challenges you'll face over the next few weeks are designed to identify capabilities and limitations that don't show up during conventional training. Sarah nodded, understanding. I'm prepared for that evaluation process. We'll see, Phillips replied with a slight smile. The good news is that you'll be training with some exceptional people. The other candidates in your class include a former Army Ranger, a Marine Force Reconnaissance Specialist, a Navy SEAL who's cross-training for joint operations, and several other individuals with impressive backgrounds. Sarah felt a moment of intimidation at the thought of competing alongside such experienced special operations personnel, but she quickly reminded herself that she wouldn't have been invited if the assessment team didn't believe she could compete effectively. The sedan arrived at a small military airfield where an unmarked aircraft waited on the tarmac. As Sarah boarded the plane, she noticed that the other passengers were all military personnel in civilian clothes, each carrying the kind of confident bearing that suggested special operations experience. During the flight, Major Phillips provided an initial briefing on what Sarah could expect during the assessment phase. The program is called Advanced Individual Training, though that's not exactly what it is, Phillips explained. Over the next 8 weeks, you'll be evaluated on every aspect of your capabilities: physical fitness, technical skills, decision-making under stress, leadership potential, and psychological suitability for specialized missions. What's the success rate? Approximately 30% of candidates complete the program successfully. Most failures occur due to inability to meet physical standards under extreme stress, though some candidates are eliminated for psychological reasons or failure to demonstrate required judgment capabilities. Phillips handed Sarah a folder containing general information about the training location and schedule. You'll find that the instructors take a very different approach than what you experienced in basic training. They won't yell at you or use intimidation tactics. Instead, they'll create situations where your true capabilities and limitations become apparent through your performance. As the aircraft began its descent, Sarah looked out the window at terrain unlike anything she had seen before: rugged mountains, dense forests, and isolated valleys that suggested a training environment designed to challenge every survival and tactical skill she possessed. One more thing, Phillips said as they prepared to land. The unit you're being considered for has a nickname that they've earned through decades of exceptional service. If you successfully complete training and are selected for assignment, you'll become part of a legacy that extends back to some of the most significant military operations in modern history. What's the nickname? Phillips smiled as the aircraft touched down. Black Talon. And after watching your performance during basic training, several people believe you might just have what it takes to earn that designation. As Sarah gathered her equipment and prepared to disembark, she felt a sense of anticipation unlike anything she had experienced before. The journey that had begun with skepticism at a recruitment office was about to enter a new phase that would determine whether her years of preparation and months of training had truly prepared her for service at the highest levels of military excellence. Behind her lay the successful completion of basic training and the recognition of instructors who had seen something special in her capabilities. Ahead lay challenges that would test every aspect of her character, skills, and commitment to becoming the kind of soldier her grandfather had believed she could be. Sarah Chun stepped off the aircraft and into the next chapter of a military career that was already exceeding every expectation and opening doors to possibilities she was only beginning to understand. The young woman who had requested a rifle at the recruitment office was about to discover that exceptional preparation, unwavering dedication, and genuine courage could lead to opportunities that existed only for those willing to pursue excellence without compromise.